There are a few things that I like to think make me unique. One of them is the technique I use. So I pipe buttercream, and so rather than using sugar or gum paste or whatever to create things, it's all hand piped. I came into the decorating field from a sort of arts point of view. So it's always been the decoration that was my sort of primary interest. And it has quite often caused me some debate because I do obviously in a way want things to sort of stay there. So yeah, so I have a sort of a bit of a fight with myself about it sometimes. I try very hard not to do the same cake twice for myself, but also I try to keep everything going in my style. It's not, so I don't want to follow trends if I can help it. I think primarily it's that I come from a sort of heavy arts background. One of the other differences between what I do and, say, an artist is that this is a business. So I use the recipe that I learnt from the Cupcake Cafe in New York. It's quite a specific recipe. I very, very seldom mix my colours in properly because I like the variegation. And also I nearly always add a bit of white when I'm doing things. Again, you get the colour coming through in an interesting way and it's not just blocks of colour. On the odd occasion when I've been filmed doing what I do, people love it. People love seeing, you actually working and seeing what's happening, and it brings things to life in a way that photography doesn't even. So it took me absolute ages to get this. People always ask, how long does this take? How long does it take to do a cake? And I nearly always say 20 years experience. I mean, in the same way that maybe a painter would have a certain strokes or a certain way of applying paint, I've got that with buttercream. So I work with it in a fairly singular way. I think I made a decision a long time ago that I wanted my cakes to remain as cakes rather than being so sort of precise and perfect that they became sort of a bit stagnant and a bit still and almost removed from the fact that you are going to eat them. I made a sort of very conscious decision that what I wanted was, whilst they are beautiful and there's a lot of work goes into them and things, I think you still know that they're cakes. So I want them to be eaten and I want them to be enjoyed as much in the eating as looking at them in the first instance. So that's important, that they taste nice. I don't want the disappointment of, oh, it looks amazing and then it just, it doesn't live up to the packaging kind of thing. So I've just finished doing an MA in textile design with the objective of using the skills that I've got from cake decorating in another medium. So yes, so I did the MA in an attempt to explore what I do from a different angle. What I did do was discover that I've got a love of silicone. I discovered that I could pipe with silicone really quite easily and I could recreate the flowers and what I do without too much difficulty. And so that immediately lost its allure to me, and I ended up designing processes for ways of working with a specific silicone and creating fabrics that were very thin or were very three-dimensional, and working with textile techniques, but again adapting them and sort of inventing new processes from old processes to work with the new material. And I bloody loved it. When I went to do the MA, I I was sort of thinking that I would drop cakes. I thought I would leave, I'd walk away from it. But actually what it did was fired up my enthusiasm again. So what's really nice about making cakes is that you're part of people's celebrations. And actually it's incredibly satisfying when when you've pleased someone. So and it's in the end wasn't something I wanted to walk away from. It also just there's a joy about making something look lovely for people. And so when it came to it, I couldn't walk away. Cake decorating's quick. You have to do it as fast as you can. You're doing it as close to the day as possible. So you have to allow for not necessarily mistakes, but you have to roll with things a bit. You can't be there sort of thinking, right, I've got to get that absolutely precise. And I think sometimes there's that desire to make things better. Everybody always sees their mistakes. That's one of the things that I found really difficult with cake sculpture, is that what you tend to have is a block of cake that you cut away, and that is absolutely not the way that my head works. Well, my favourite clients are the ones that say you can do what you want, Katja, this is the theme. With weddings, that's often that I'm given a lot of scope. So I did 2 wedding cakes, 2 very different wedding cakes. One of them that had mushrooms on it. So that was the starting point of the whole design. And she did want to keep that element. So I knew that bit was important to keep. But then after that, I designed, I think, 3 different cakes for her. And then she edited it, and so between us we worked together, and then in the end we got a cake that was very distinctly mine, but at the same time had the elements that she wanted. With the other cake, the ladies that were getting married, they just talked to me about things that were important to them. What we got were 3 very distinct layers. So in the bottom layer there was vegetables, because they enjoyed gardening, and then we had wild flowers, and then on the top we had blue tits with sweet peas. The process for designing a cake is pretty similar to any sort of design process. So I work with the client, but I hope that they're also coming to me because they like my designs. I wanted to do some birds, and I've got quite a 3-dimensional head, so I tend to sort of build things up a lot. Anyway, it's got to a point where I now build these birds out of cake and buttercream, and it's quite interesting how over the last 3 weeks, I've done a lot of birds. Suddenly everybody's like asking for birds on their cakes. So I did do a cake that had a woodpecker, a blue tit, and a robin on it. And so the robin was sort of a giant robin next to the fairly small woodpecker. And then on the, blue tits seem to be quite popular. Robins are obviously quite popular. They're quite difficult robins. Anything with too much length is quite a difficult thing to do in buttercream if you're doing 3-dimensional stuff. I've stuck with this one for 25 years, so actually I have got to a point where I'm really good at it, and I've got that skill, and I'm an expert. So somewhere along the line, I've sort of fallen into this being my sort of state of expertise. And I really hate being there when we're eating the cake. I really find it very difficult. Partly, or mainly because I want everybody to like it. And so actually what you're doing is sort of, you're not enjoying yourself because you're like, did they like that? Did they like that? Are they eating it? Are they eating it? You know, how many pieces of cake have been left?